All right, hey everybody. Coming up to midnight on November 29th, 2021. Tracking coronavirus in the markets, which for the past few months has seemed like any direct correlation was over. And then just before the long weekend, Omicron. Omicron takes a hit at the market, and we're still trying to figure out really the severity. So, who it raised some concern, but this was a really good take. Um, Acknowledging that WHO calls it a variant of concern. Um, will end up being as significant as the Delta variant. Hello. But maybe they still need a couple weeks to be sure. So there were these other variants that for a minute seemed dangerous. Um, they weren't, and yet Delta, I think it's pretty much everywhere now. Um, Here we are. It hasn't even been detected in the United States, but they fully expect it, which is a crazy thought because they're already closing down travel from South Africa where it was identified. Um, it's interesting though. I mean, the counter argument to this is this one article floating around saying, well, there's a doctor in South Africa and he said 10 patients, their symptoms weren't that bad. Um, but I think there's probably some others that are also optimistic. Um, okay, all right, we covered this one. Here's what we know. Seeking Alpha had a piece, I think it's this one, Omicron edition. Well, isn't so you get these types of pieces, pretty frequently on other sites. The sensationalism sells for sure, and you first start looking down, and here's a guy who's very bearish, all right, and then you throw in Omicron and so on and so forth, but okay, and the Fed tapering, that is also a factor, and it goes through some valuations of companies, but what what hits kind of hard is this one. Schiller, that takes a 10-year historical, so 10-year trailing, inflation adjusted. Um, and other than that, it's a price earnings ratio. And going back to 1880, um, and here we are today. This dip here was probably March 2020 when Corona first really hit the markets, which, as I was saying, the markets look a bit like this PE ratio. We'll have a look later. Um, Fox's big piece was over here. It's going to lead to restrictions, and there have been more restrictions, especially travel restrictions, and in Europe. Suggesting that could derail economic recovery.
Build customizable.
These ads, so I have to close them. All right, close that view. There was a mention of the VIX fear index, the volatility index. What this was 5 years, so um, this was essentially what happened last weekend here. And again, when we get to the broader market, we can look at that. Kramer, not really taking a side, giving out two scenarios, and is pretty much saying, COVID or not, Amazon, Microsoft, even Netflix, Alphabet are good companies. And then maybe, talks about some potential bounce back plays. So, have a look in I don't know, 6 months, a year from now. American Express down 9% over the past month. Does it make a comeback? We'll see. Right, yes, and this is, I don't know if this is a short-lived article, but in some ways it's right. So, here we go. This is what we've just seen over the past few days. So this down here, it was all Omicron. We've got a new variant, and it is cause to panic. But then, Monday, markets bounced back pretty sturdily. And it's been interesting watching the futures tonight, because sometimes the headlines don't match up with what they are right at this second. But I think what you'll see is, despite that bounce back, the futures were looking a bit weak. Yeah, down 1% and a bit more, and blaming it as virus fears. Oh, yes, right. for the moment when futures were extending the gains. They're not extending gains at the moment. And brief plug to FinViz, which is a great source of information. Usually look at the United States or Washington, but we're going to start Germany today, and going all the way back to don't like that's it, collapses in. Don't get the full picture. All right, so March 2020, when things first began. Wow, such a disparity, gosh. You would think down here we're in the clear. The coast is clear, and look at this. Even while having achieved almost 70% vaccination usage and hospital resource use. Be so easy to think we're in the clear here and something's happening. We'll have a look at the United States. Oh, good. It's already opened up to March. Right. Yeah, so here's the national picture in the United States. Interesting. Um, just to give that broader, let's see, kind of 2-year market picture. I don't think the down that we've just experienced seems like such a blip right there. It really is a blip, and we're listening to different opinions about uh, how serious it's going to be. Um, Moderna, that's like one of the major vaccine manufacturers, one of the best vaccine manufacturers, um, says it's going to be less effective against it, and they need a couple weeks to figure it out. But you got to think that the people who are um, making major investments in the market uh, really have eyes in on that data and the severity. So I would kind of expect that the market activity in the next couple days, or at least the next week, is gonna really know and predict the severity of Omicron. We shall see.